everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies, recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together, talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations.
And today, we are finally wrapping up part 2 of a conversation that we had about 8 months ago. After discussing the Barbie half of last year's cinematic cultural phenomenon known as Barbenheimer, we are finally making space for the second half of that portmanteau, and we are talking Oppenheimer. Fresh off its big win at the Oscars. Big night, I should say. Many wins.
At the Oscars this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, this directly ties into our cycle about unique Best Picture winners, and you, the listener, are probably picking up this episode in the middle of that cycle, but we're recording it after everything else has been done for that, just to stay up to speed with the moment.
Yeah, for sure. We should also say Oppenheimer should not be confused with Coal Miner's Daughter. I know it's, kind of similar there. The 1980s
Vaguely
film.
rhymes.
Yeah, somewhat, Sissy Spacek, Tommy Lee Jones, Levon Helm. It's also an Oscar winner. Sissy Spacek did win Best Actress for her portrayal as the rising country star Loretta Lynn. So, not to be confused with Coal Miner's Daughter.
Yeah, for the little rhymes that exist in there. And also not to be confused with, on a subject matter note, The Day After Trinity, 1981 documentary about the very same material, about Oppenheimer, about the Manhattan Project, but told in linear fashion and without actors, with a lot of the real people who you see portrayed by actors in the film.
Very cool. I feel like I'd want to see that, actually.
I have seen it. It was on Criterion for a little while after Oppenheimer was released, and it's pretty fascinating. Okay. I do recommend, but yes, not to be confused with The Day After Trinity.
I see that. I see how that can be confusing. This is also not to be confused with The Imitation Game, which also takes place during World War II and focuses on a different academic doing some very important work with Benedict Cumberbatch starring as Alan Turing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty good movie. Very interesting, 1-2 punch, this movie and that one.
Yeah, I think they'd make a pretty good double feature.
Yeah, for sure. It's not to be confused also with a very different movie, Career Opportunities, a 1991 film starring Frank Whaley, who's maybe best known as the guy who can't stop saying what in Pulp Fiction. Yeah. Or also check out The Big Brain on Brad. It's starring that guy, Frank Whaley, and Jennifer Connelly. It's a movie that, have you guys know this movie?
No, I do not.
This is one of those weird 90s movies that it's just an interesting artifact. It just revolves around them trying to thwart two bumbling crooks from robbing a Target. It's written by John Hughes, no less, but this is not one of John Hughes' best movies. But yes, not to be confused with Career Opportunities. I would also say not to be confused with Dr. Strangelove. Right?
Yeah.
Kubrick film, 1964, which I also think would be a great double feature with this
totally.
film.
Yeah. That's maybe in terms of content. I mean, I could see reason for confusion there, so not to be confused with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big winner, though.
Big winner. Yeah.
Winner, chicken dinner.
So we've started by talking about the fact that Oppenheimer won Best Picture at the 96th Academy Awards. And, we waited to record this until we knew what would win that award because, as we have gone over, there are some surprises sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there were a couple that night.
There were a few, not this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, in regards to Oppenheimer, not that many.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything that it won felt anticipated and I think deserved.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so the fun thing about the Oscars this year is that we all watched them together.
Yes,
we did.
This was our first podcast field trip.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun. We were at the Metrograph.
Yes.
Thanks to your suggestion, Julian.
Yes. Yeah, this was the third year in a row that I had attended their free Oscars watch party. which is a delightful experience. It has been each time. And yeah,
I wanted to ask really quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but did any of you get an email from them?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I'm assuming none of us won $500 that we had the winning ballots.
So for those that don't know, at Metrograph on Oscars night, you can submit a ballot of who you think is going to win, and they do give out prizes. And I had a pretty good streak going at the beginning. I think I went 7 for 7 before there was an upset for me.
Yeah, we were a little behind you, but I think by the end we were.
I think we were pretty much
close. Yeah.
By the end of it, I did a tally, and I got 17 out of 23 predictions correct.
I mean, that would probably put you in at least the top.
I mean,
like 20%.
Yeah, I was also up there. I forget my exact number, but it was like 17 or 18.
Well, there were 2 that you guessed correctly that I didn't, and I think that's probably like 19 out of 23.
But I think it was reversed as well. Like, I think there were also 1 or 2 that you guessed correctly that I did not. So it may have evened out in the end.
Yeah.
But I think somebody, I guess, probably got up in the 20s.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it was Yoni. Do you guys remember Yoni? He was sitting right in front of us.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
Of course.
Shout out to Yoni. He was really cool. He also seemed to be really into Poor Things, which Madeline, you and I.
Absolutely.
He was cheering any Poor Things victory on, which in the beginning of the night, there were a couple. So
I mean, Poor Things had a pretty good run there for a while. I'd say like my main takeaway from the Oscars is I was afraid that Poor Things was going to be too weird for the Academy. And yes, I even say this after Everything Everywhere All at Once swept last year, because I was like, that's a fluke. There's no way they're going to continue to award these like weird, like kind of blank check style movies. And so I didn't think it was going to take home that much, but I think everything it took home was very well deserved, and it was on a run there with the production awards for a while.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and I think the biggest surprise of the night was probably, I mean, though it's really debatably surprising, Emma Stone winning Best Actress.
In the moment, my jaw was on the floor. Like had just kind of convinced myself
at that point.
I think
hers was too.
She looked panicked.
Yeah,
she did.
And Dougie attributed that to the fact that her dress was like ripping open from the back.
I think that's one way to read it.
But I think that was probably part of it. But I think that she is kind of aware of the optics.
She's very aware of the optics. Yeah.
And I mean, to be clear, I think her performance as Bella Baxter it's an awards worthy performance for sure.
Oh, totally.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And
I might even go so far as to say it's the best performance of Emma Stone's career so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing too is, I don't want to besmirch Lily Gladstone's performance at all, because she's very, very good in that movie.
She's excellent in that movie.
Yeah.
But to speak to something that you guys talked about before I saw the film, I didn't think that she was in the wrong category. She did not feel like Best Actress running time worthy.
Yeah.
And I understand that there was there's some strong importance behind what she represents in the film, thematically for the story. But yeah, I mean, it might feel a little normy for me to point out the big difference between how a movie like Poor Things revolves so strongly around Emma Stone's character, and how Lily Gladstone's performance really feels like it's got to be there, but I could see it going in many different directions. And so, I'm with you guys. I think it's very deserved.
Yeah, I think I've said, kind of from the beginning that I found it kind of odd that they placed her in lead, that they placed Lily Gladstone in lead, even though I think it's an excellent performance, and I do think that movie would not work without her. Like that's absolutely the case. And you could argue that the movie does in some ways like revolve around her, but runtime wise, like screen time wise, I don't think that's the case. And do you guys think that if she was in supporting, she would have won it?
I think in a landslide.
I mean, obviously, Divine Joy Randolph, also excellent performance, but very different performance.
Very different. And I think that the enthusiasm for her performance was really very strong. And I think that if it wasn't pitted up against Emma Stone's, I think, no disrespect, like you say, to Divine Joy Randolph's performance, but I think it would have actually done it.
I sort of think that Lily Gladstone and Divine Joy Randolph in the same category could have been neck and neck.
I mean, it could have.
Yeah.
I think that up against Emma Stone, that is truly neck and neck. And I think that if she kind of got bumped down into that kind of more supporting actress category. I think that would have been like a shoo-in.
Because the fact that she was able to, like, in the public consciousness, kind of get to a point where many people, us included, thought she was shoo-in for lead against a previous Best Actress winner, Emma Stone.
Yeah, and a stacked cast.
Exactly.
Or a group of actresses, yeah.
Exactly.
It's true.
And so then, like, put her in that same position, but in a supporting actor category, where the person who ended up winning, who would have been probably her toughest competition, is kind of a newcomer to the screen. I think that, like, just the public conversation maybe would have pushed her over the edge.
Totally.
Yeah, interesting.
Still, a lot of fun. I had a really fun time with you guys.
Agreed.
You know,
Totally.
and it was very cool, I think, to see a lot of the bombast. I mean, I feel like this Academy Awards was pretty cool. I think there were a lot of really nice touches to it, and I mean, apart from Pacino's questionable. I don't know if that was a gaffe or not. I've read somewhere that he said that the producers wanted him to do that.
For what it's worth, I mean, however you feel about it, we did get another memorable Al Pacino line out of that night.
That is true.
We did.
Yeah.
What I had read is that the producers said not to read off all of the nominees, which makes sense to me. And they've done this before. And ever since they bumped up to 10 and they, like, you know, they show clips throughout the night, like, I understand at that point why we don't need to hear all 10 again. We know who's nominated.
Right.
Yeah, they were all shown too, I think, coming right out of commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting to consider which movies didn't win anything too, because there were a few Best Picture nominees that was the case for, like with Maestro or Killers of the Flower Moon or Past Lives.
Killers of the Flower Moon was the only. I mean, that one because so many people thought Lily Gladstone was going to win.
Right.
That was their only shot, I think, at an award.
Yeah. Probably. And there's sort of the feeling that, like, Scorsese's gotten awards already.
But not
yeah.
as many
really.
as
But
you
not-
would
but
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like he, in like sort of the obligatory way with the Academy, has gotten awards for The Departed, and I mean his movies have won more awards than he has. Like De Niro for Raging Bull.
Yeah,
things like
I think
that.
that's
But
a
even
good way
De Niro
to
from Raging
refresh
Bull
them, yeah.
is like a 50-year-old movie. Like
Yeah.
nearly. It's
Yeah.
like I think that even The Departed, like that's been a while.
It's true. Almost
Yeah.
20 years.
And that
yeah.
one also felt funny in the moment. It was
Yeah.
sort of like for this film, it's a very good film, but it's kind of, I mean, I would put that movie up there in terms of it career achievement with something closer to like Shutter Island.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like a very well done genre film.
Right.
As opposed to like The Raging Bulls or
Taxi Driver.
Taxi
Yeah,
Driver,
Goodfellas.
half a dozen of them that could
Right.
go there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I have more things to say about Scorsese in regards to not only Best Picture, but in regards to Oppenheimer that I will say later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a comparison I have in mind, but
we can totally start
Yeah.
shifting the conversation back to Oppenheimer if you want. Yeah.
Before we're done just talking about the Academy Awards in general, I think that Lily Gladstone, even though she didn't win this year, I think, what could be good for her in the future is that now the Academy's eyes are on her, and for future roles that are prominently featured, she could be a shoo-in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
possibly.
I believe
totally
she's in the next Charlie Kaufman movie. and
Yeah, I've heard
I'm
that.
really excited to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, to keep the conversation on the Oscars, but also talk about Oppenheimer now, just as one like funny anecdote to kick this off. I mean, I have no idea if this is true, but I like to believe that like part of the campaigning for the movie winning the Oscars and other awards it's won at various shows it consisted of Benny Safdie going around and saying in his Edward Teller voice that I believe Oppenheimer to be the greatest film of the year. I will continue to believe so until I see very conclusive proof to the opposite.
Wow.
That was solid.
That's pretty good.
That's very
Yeah.
impressive.
I mean, and on that subject, I remember watching Oppenheimer and being genuinely impressed that Benny Safdie's got he's working up a reel right now of good
Absolutely
acting.
has
Yeah.
chops.
He's got some chops.
Right.
Yeah, if you
it's-
see good Time
Oh,
too,
yeah.
it's like
He's-
he
Licorice
really
Pizza.
transforms in that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Licorice Pizza feels a little more like
He's being himself.
He's being himself, but he's
Yeah.
very good in it.
But I don't know. I actually, because I had mostly seen him like the first performance that comes to my mind of his is Good Time.
Yeah.
That when I see Licorice Pizza, that actually kind of knocked me back because it is such a normie kind of role.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but it showcases his range, that's for
Exactly.
sure.
I mean, and this movie too.
Yeah, and in Oppenheimer,
I should say.
And
yeah.
I know that, Julian, you just started The Curse literally yesterday.
Or 2 days ago.
Literally 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I assume you haven't watched it yet, Emilio.
I have not. I've heard a lot about it.
It's excellent. I can't say a whole lot. This is Benny Safdie's collaboration with Nathan Fielder. It's a really excellent show that came out earlier this year, last year, and I do not want to spoil anything. The finale is, you could be given a million guesses on how the show ends and you will not figure it out.
I like that.
And it's so interesting. And I've been telling Julian to watch it for months because I need to have somebody to talk to about this ending.
Yeah.
So
you will in due time.
Stand by for that.
Where do you stream it? Or
Paramount Plus.
Okay.
With Showtime.
Yeah.
With Showtime.
Yeah. But I'd say the Paramount Plus with Showtime is actually a pretty decent deal.
Yeah.
You've said you're like, yeah.
I agree with that so far.
We've been holding on to Paramount Plus for Paw Patrol. That's what we do in our house.
Yeah.
But he's very good in that as well.
In Paw Patrol?
Yes.
I didn't know he did voices for that. Okay, sorry.
The Paw
In The
Patrol
Curse.
and The Curse.
He would, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but maybe so. I would
Yeah.
put it past him. He does great voice
And
work.
once
Yeah.
again, he has a character that's entirely different than any of these other characters. He plays kind of like a sleazy director.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
I'm in. I'm totally in on anything Benny Safdie.
Yeah.
And thinking about, so Oppenheimer obviously had this really successful night at the Oscars. It won 7 awards total. But what's interesting is when you look at the total tally of awards won in the night, there's a lot of awards going to movies specifically set during World War II.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Zone
mean,
of Interest?
Yeah.
Zone of Interest, Boy and the Heron.
Boy and the Heron, yeah.
And you mentioned Madeline, Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1 also
Yeah.
takes place. So, I mean, yeah, even before the awards were given out, like that has struck me a lot. I mean, obviously seeing Oppenheimer last summer, and then I guess the next one I saw was Boy and the Heron, and I thought like, wow, this is a really good, this would be a really interesting double feature because these movies are so starkly different, but they take place in the same time period. And then, yeah, Godzilla -1 is like that. It's not just the fact that like Godzilla is, canonically created because of radiation, but it's like it actively takes place in the aftermath of the bombings. So that, I think, even more than Boy and the Heron, would be a really interesting double feature once again. It's amazing how many movies you can pair with Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we are living in Oppenheimer's world, aren't we?
true.
And relevantly, too, I actually just yesterday was at the film forum and saw the original 1954 Godzilla.
Oh, how was that?
Which is great. It holds up very well. Even for the campy things about it, there's a charm to it that's very distinct.
Cool.
And
I haven't seen it. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard it's like worth seeing.
You should see it. It really is a very good movie. But there's like a somberness to it when you focus on the human plots in it that maybe it exists in other Godzilla movies, but it feels very distinct to that time, and it feels like something that could only have come from Japan in the post-World War II period.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's like it's a great blend of the very authentic, like sobering reality of life in that time and place, but also there's some great blockbuster thrills in it too.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. And in it's campy in the best way possible. But what's worth mentioning too, without spoiling it, is that the original Godzilla ends on a note very similar to Oppenheimer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
we'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really glad that Godzilla -1 won visual effects. There was somebody in our audience at Metrograph who was like really not happy about this. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, they were towards the front, right?
Yeah, they were towards the front, and I don't want to clip too much, but this lady just yells, "What?" like right after that award is announced. And I'm like, what was she pulling for? I mean, I hadn't seen all those movies. I didn't get to Mission Impossible. Like, I don't know. Maybe a lot of those have excellent. Maybe she loved the effects in Napoleon. I don't know. But Godzilla -1 has really excellent visual effects. So I was like, it was odd to me that was the award that had the most vocal reaction from somebody in our crowd at Metrograph.
I
single person.
Yeah, I also just loved the acceptance speech.
Oh yeah, and they have
Yeah.
their little action figures.
I loved that. I loved it so much. I felt like it was just one of those. It was kind of like a fan moment. I love it when
Totally.
moments like that get captured, where you are totally reminded of the fact that these are movies that hit people not just on a level of wonderful technical craft that can be judged against one up against another. It's just on a visceral level, like a movie can exist with people as something that they want to commemorate, like with a doll. I just love that. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I also think another thing that struck me in that speech and in several others, and it's something that I think we're hearing more and more lately, is when they address like the other nominees and the other people in the room as like, you guys are why I wanted to make movies.
Yeah.
I don't have the name of the Oppenheimer editor right in front of me.
Jennifer Lame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She said a very similar thing where she was like, the editors in this room are like, why I wanted to do this.
Bong Joon-ho also, I think, said that in one of his acceptance speeches for Parasite to Quentin Tarantino. He's like,
I think Scorsese as well.
Yeah, thank you for like, you know, championing my films in this country, you know, and giving me inspiration.
It's something that I think we've heard a lot more of in the last few years, particularly as we still have the Scorseses and the Spielbergs who are still there and they're still making movies and they're still very active in the industry and they're still like in the audience.
Right.
Even if Scorsese doesn't look like he wants to be there at all.
With Spielberg, I thought he might have won the audience member award for the Oscars this year.
He was a very
fun.
good sport.
Yeah. Very good sport. That's a great way of putting it.
You know, when Kimmel says, remember the kid from The Fabelmans? This is what he looks like now.
That was funny.
That was
funny.
nice because I also didn't really see that coming at all, even though it is right there for the taking.
Exactly.
And Kate McKinnon's jokes about her tasteful nudes.
Oh, that's right. And he played along really nicely. Just
she was
hamming
like,
a little bit for the
she
camera,
was like,
right?
where are those going if Jeff Goldblum isn't real? And he points to himself and
Yeah.
like gems the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Kate McKinnon, man, she's just the best.
But on the topic of acceptance speeches and on a more somber note too, I mean, there were several acceptance speeches in this same ceremony. Most notably from, I think, Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. And
for the 20 days
in Mariupol.
Yeah, that one.
I believe his name is Mstislav Chernov.
Thank you.
I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But the two of them together both made direct acknowledgments of the wars going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And, in Jonathan Glazer's case, he was specifically speaking out against the genocide against Palestinians that's going on right now. But also that then Mstislav Chernov he specifically said, I wish I did not have to make this movie about 20 days in Mariupol, which is a very understandable feeling.
And something to the effect of he would give this award back if there was just a way that they could erase all the violence.
Right.
Yeah.
Bring the people back.
Exactly. Which I think most people would say, but it is very affecting when you hear it said in that moment when it's supposed to be such a congratulatory, a moment where he's able to kind of feel self-congratulatory. It's like, no, man, like this is about real life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but then in a more in a more positive framing, Cillian Murphy made a similar point in his acceptance speech. Yeah, he's dedicating his award to the peacemakers of the world.
Yeah.
And I think like he was smiling as he said it, clearly taking in the happiness of the moment, but also, making that important message known too.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, those three acceptance speeches were the standouts to me of the night. You can't really argue that, these points being made are the most important of anything that's really said that night. And, stumbled on my words there. Then I was just thinking about how Oppenheimer sits in the zeitgeist as a Best Picture winner. Like we've been talking about unique Best Picture winners, and I guess one of the questions to consider here is Oppenheimer unique in that regard? Is it unique only because Christopher Nolan directed it? It's the only Nolan movie to win. But is there what do you both think? Is it unique? Is it not?
I think thematically and in terms of how the movie kind of unfolds, I wouldn't actually say that this movie is terribly unique. I mean, it is a really, really well-made movie. And what's kind of cool about it is that it's a couple movies rolled into one.
Right.
It's the getting the band together movie. It's the biopic. It's the semi-courtroom. They keep mentioning that it's not a court, but there's courtroom drama elements.
The vibe is totally court.
Exactly. Yeah, there are courtroom drama elements to it. And it's also there's a little bit of a whodunit that gets kind of tucked in there as well.
Yeah.
But I do think that from a scope perspective and from a technical perspective and a kind of marriage of all of that craft with a really compelling story, that feels oddly very Oscar-y to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I understand that for sure. And I think like us going in and many other people considered Oppenheimer a shoo-in for Best Picture, probably for reasons like that. When you look at the history of the Oscars, I mean, two things that Oppenheimer are one, it's biographical, and two, it's a war movie. And those are actually
That's a very good point.
pretty well represented amongst Best Picture winners. So in those regards, it definitely had the odds in its favor. But I do think it stands out from a lot of those other movies in terms of the strength of what it does, the historical accuracy, the scope of everything that it says, everything that it depicts. Like Emilio, like what you were saying, that it's kind of 3 movies in one. There's just so much going on in it, and I think it comes together incredibly tightly, incredibly coherently for what it is. And maybe we'll get a little more at this later on. Maybe there's other zeitgeist reasons why this has been propelled. I think it's definitely unique in its level of quality, even with the history of the Oscars honoring these specific types of movies. There have been, some biopics they've honored before that have been very well received, others that have been kind of like, it's fine, but we get why the Oscars would award it. I think you can say the same of war movies. And I mean, thinking about Oscars history, I mean, there were a couple of other comparisons I felt compelled to draw. As a career comparison, the movie I keep thinking about, the Best Picture winner I keep thinking about as most comparable to Oppenheimer is probably No Country for Old Men, because Nolan's about as deep in his career as the Coens were at that time. It's a similarly strong movie for him. I think that both are adaptations, in which cases, like the source material, though it did not come from the people who directed it, it was perfect for them.
Yeah, definitely.
They knew exactly what to do with it.
I could totally see that as a comparison. It's funny, though. There's something about this movie that does feel very Oscar baity in some respects. You mentioned The Imitation Game, which I thought of a lot when I was watching
I think
this.
the comparison there is not just like the time period and kind of the subject matter, but that it's focusing so much on like this one like kind of tortured academic who is like dealing with having to lead a huge, incredibly important project that's going to be like a real moment in human history and that's going to affect a lot of people
and
like kind of change our world as
it's going to change the world. In that movie, they also grapple with the aspects of like the chess of war. They're able to crack the Enigma code, but with the end goal of actually winning the war, they can't show their hand yet. And so many thousands of people die because they can't reveal to the Germans that they know that yet. In much the same way, this movie also grapples with the idea of technology and advancement of human thought
and like the responsibility of a genius. And also I think the other thing with each of these movies, as I said, they're both kind of tortured in a way, like it deals with the human element of the person at the center.
Right.
Absolutely.
Although I do remember Alan Turing being a more sympathetic character than J. Robert Oppenheimer in a number of ways. I remember him being less arrogant. I think I felt for him a bit more. Like there is definitely like a narcissistic side of Oppenheimer that I don't particularly remember being there for Alan Turing.
Maybe. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen that movie. I feel like though Benedict Cumberbatch does portray him as pretty cold throughout a lot of the film. So I'm not saying he's unsympathetic, but I don't know that.
Not completely sympathetic all the time.
I kind of remember it similarly. I think I saw that movie when it came out in theaters, but I remember him being kind of cold, but also similar to Oppenheimer, feeling like he had a little bit of exceptionalism because of his brilliance.
Yeah.
And each of these men have like, they legitimately have like the whole world on their shoulders. Like the responsibility that's put on these two men in the films and also in real life that we actually did to these people.
Yeah. There's also the idea too, well, not the idea, the fact that, well, with Alan Turing, he was closeted as well, and that added to the pressure of his experience, that he was someone who was necessary for the war effort, but outcasted by that society at that time. And well, it seems like with Oppenheimer that
there are shades of that.
Yeah,
well, but, I
absolutely.
mean, he's not,
not
he was
closeted.
not closeted, but with his political leanings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His personal affiliations. Yeah.
Yeah. And they mean different things. They register in different ways, but there is a tangential comparison that can be drawn there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
definitely.
a lot of The Imitation Game when I
Honestly,
was thinking of Oppenheimer and this conversation.
I didn't really think of that, which is interesting to hear. And just for context, I have watched Oppenheimer 5 times as of this recording. 4 times in the theaters, once on Peacock for this conversation. And I mean, so it goes almost without saying, I got pretty obsessed with this movie when it came out.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I've seen it twice. I saw it Barbenheimer weekend, and then I watched it the Friday before the Oscar ceremony, because as I told you guys, I was so confident it was going to win. And I knew we were going to have this conversation, and I knew I wasn't going to have time to watch it between Sunday and Wednesday, which is currently when we're recording. So I watched it Friday night.
Yeah.
This is good planning on your part. I'm gonna say right now, this is very good planning.
Also, one of a few examples of, specifically relating to Oscars weekend of you having great intuitions.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
The other being, for the listeners, that you correctly called 2 of the 3 short film winners.
Even though I did not watch any of them and you did.
Yes, I watched all of them, and then but I was choosing my favorites based on quality rather than
That's your mistake.
awards probability. Yeah, so
But you got one right.
I got one right. Yeah.
If you would like to know either of our picks, there is something on our TikTok where we reveal our picks for that.
Yes, we're
That's
on TikTok.
Right. We're on TikTok, guys.
Sleepless Cinematic Pod. But yeah, and so and thinking about just continuing with a few other notes about Oppenheimer's status as a Best Picture winner. I mean, another movie I just realized I could compare it to a little more in some qualitative ways. This is a movie on the surface that would seem to have nothing to do with Oppenheimer, but I thought about it and I can see some connections, and that's The Godfather Part 2.
Maybe that's why they brought Al Pacino.
Maybe. It's also the 50th anniversary of that movie this year. I thought of it because of parallel plot lines in different time periods happening.
Right.
There's also this sense that even though it's different amounts of characters, there's this sense with the central character that everyone wants a piece of this man. Where it's Godfather Part 2, it's Pentangeli, it's Fredo, and then it's also, I'm trying to remember,
there are a lot of characters in that movie.
Why am I blanking on it?
No,
right
it's
now?
all good.
Hyman Roth.
I was gonna say the
Yeah.
hotel guy.
Yeah, everyone wants a piece of Michael Corleone, and even more people want a piece of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
It's almost like the atoms that he's trying to control. Oppenheimer himself is that kind of person for the U.S. government, for the Communist Party, for almost anyone who has anything to do with him. He is just this thing that they want to use in some way. He's this device. And also, just before we really transition away from the Oscars relevance, this might sound far-fetched, but hear me out.
Okay.
You've said these things before.
Yeah, hear me out. I think that, when you look at the time in which Oppenheimer emerges as a Best Picture winner, this is a pretty fitting follow-up to Everything Everywhere All at Once for a few reasons, being that there is both of these movies have pretty epic scopes. They have frenetic editing throughout, a couple different timelines going on within. And there is just, this unity of things of seismic importance, or this marriage of things of seismic importance with the personal realm. And so I think that, as different on the surface as those movies are, I find it interesting that they receive awards in back-to-back years.
Okay.
I wonder if there's a larger...
I mean, all of these points are true. All of these comparisons are accurate.
I can totally appreciate what you just said.
Yeah. So I maybe there is no trend to be drawn there, and we'll see as time goes on. But what if whatever wins a year from now has similar qualities? I think that would be interesting.
I mean
I
maybe, but
hope not.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I forget. I think. Oh yeah, it was the director Cord Jefferson of American Fiction. In his speech, he's like, "Let's fund less $100 million movies and let's fund more $10 million movies and $3 million movies." And I'm like, "Sir, they don't make $3 million movies anymore."
Yeah, they really don't.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but yeah, it's as much as I love a film with a broad broad scope, and I really enjoyed this movie, and I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once, I would really like for the Academy to reward like a smaller scope film.
Interesting.
I don't want to go 3 years in a row where like it has to be this bombastic. I do have a comparison like with your question of like, does Oppenheimer have any similarities to previous Best Picture winners? And Nolan said that he took a lot of inspiration from Amadeus with the kind of rivalry between Oppenheimer and Strauss, as you know, in comparison to the rivalry between Mozart and Salieri. And so that's also, you know, that's another Best Picture winner from several decades ago that I think also can kind of fit into this in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. I did not hear that, but it makes all the sense in the world, especially as the third act kind of takes shape.
Yeah, and so I think like maybe there's a better argument for the ripples of the Everything Everywhere All at Once win and Emma Stone winning Best Actress and everything that Poor Things got.
Yeah, I definitely think Poor Things is the closer parallel.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Ultimately, I agree with that, you know, myself too, because like one of my first thoughts after leaving Poor Things for the first time was that this is the most kaleidoscopic movie I've seen since Everything Everywhere All at Once.
There we go.
But that's not to say that Oppenheimer isn't kaleidoscopic. It absolutely is in a lot of respects. But yeah, I mean, that's all I'll say for that comparison for now.
Well, I thought the next question, because we all kind of bandy questions back and forth with one another about this, but I really liked what you were mentioning, you know, in terms of, you know, why this movie might have made such a big splash, you know, today.
Yeah.
I don't have a great answer for it, but I'm thinking a lot about that.
I mean, to use like some of my wording from how I wrote the question in an email, like there's some things that make it like an obvious, like not just for the Oscars, but just as a successful movie, there's a few things that make it an obvious candidate for that, be it Christopher Nolan's prominence or the importance, the intricacy, the scope of the subject matter. But on some level, I feel like that's not the entire story here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of a perfect storm of like Nolan. I mean, I hear people say this, and I think that it's true. Is the like biggest living director right now.
Right.
Like, I mean, if you ask the average person to like name you a director, they might go Spielberg, they might go Scorsese, they might go Coppola. They are likely going to go Nolan, like if they're under the age of like 50, I would say. So I think that is a big part of it. I think that Barbenheimer really just did like it. Barbie and Oppenheimer both owe so much to this phenomenon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of that was, I think, drummed up by the public.
Yeah.
Right. Just kind of seeing these two movies that look like they couldn't be more different.
Right.
Right. But also, at their cores, made by really exceptional artists. Right.
Yeah.
And so you were always going to be in great hands. Whether you were going to see one movie or you were going to see another.
Yeah.
And
so, yeah.
this was a lot of people's return to the movie theater as well, like post-pandemic. Like, I think that contributes to this to a certain extent. I know we say that Top Gun saved movie theaters or whatever, but I mean, Barbenheimer really did that again a year later. And I was hearing from a lot of people that was the first time they went back to a movie theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a lot going, I mean, really for both of these movies, you know, before they had even come out. But I sort of think like when you consider Oppenheimer entering the landscape at this time in history, like most of the events of this movie happened around 80 years ago. You know, they're innately important things still to this day. You know, the innovations of the Manhattan Project, like they wrought this trauma upon the world that we cannot ignore.
Right. Yeah.
You know, to say the very least. But I just was thinking about how. So, you know, let's say Christopher Nolan decides at any random point in time that he wants to make this movie. Would it have been as successful? Quite possibly.
I mean, I think there's a lot of fascination in the public about World War II and that era in American history. And I think the movie makes an incredibly compelling argument for why this man and what he was at the heart of and at the helm of has really changed the world, and we are living in his world. We're living in the world of this individual and all of the peripheral scientists that work together for it, but we're living in the world of their creation.
Yeah.
That no one thing has shaped international politics and our general way of thinking quite like it. And so
Right.
I think there's something inherently fascinating about that one way or the other. And I think that's one of the strengths of the movie is that it constantly plays with this idea of, is this bomb going to ultimately be the greatest sign of peace, or is it going to be the ultimate destroyer of worlds?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the story of a like complicated genius is pretty eternal. I think that we really gravitate towards these stories.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Amadeus, I love that. That's got my brain on fire. I love that.
Yeah.
That comparison is really cool.
I still haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, I think considering you've seen this one 5 times, you can make time to see Amadeus once, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard though with Amadeus, that
No
there's,
shade, by the way.
There's like
Enjoy this as much as you
I
want.
understand, but like I've heard with Amadeus that there's like a director's cut. That's what most people see of it, which isn't the version that you should see. That like the theatrical cut is like it has a more refined focus on the Salieri-Mozart conflict. The
Emilio,
envy
do you
of
have
it
an
all.
opinion on
I
this?
can't remember if the DVD that I had was a director's cut or not.
Right.
So I don't know. This is probably back in 06, 05, 06.
Yeah.
Not sure. Either way, I think, there's so much at the heart of that film that honestly, it was very, very present in Oppenheimer too. Very cool.
Yeah. And I thought too, I mean, there's all these topics within it that were made relevant back in the 1940s that remain relevant to this day. I think, just like we're all living at a precarious moment in world history with wars going on around the world and also global warming, things like that.
Yeah. And like encroaching technology.
Technology. That's a great point. Yeah. And also, so in many ways, like the evils that you see portrayed and engaged with in Oppenheimer have not left, they've just changed form.
Right.
And sadly, some of them feel perpetually relevant. Also, I think the forms of power struggle that you see in the movie, I think there's something very eye-opening about seeing things from like 70, 80 years ago portrayed with as much clarity as they would be today. With these all conflicts that predate all of our lifetimes, and in many cases our parents' lifetimes, where just like it seems like, sometimes these things you convince yourself they're lost to history, but they're not. They're really the same struggles keep going on, just with different people in sometimes different forms.
The bureaucracy of Strauss that Strauss orchestrates, I think is also like something that we as a culture are particularly interested in, because we're in a time where people are very like just politically engaged and within the last decade or so have actually sat down to watch like cabinet hearings, like cabinet nomination hearings in a way that I don't know if people were really paying that much attention to for a good chunk of like the 20th century and early 21st century.
Yeah.
Right. I think there is more than ever an awareness of how all of these little positions can add up to a big change or big decisions being made.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're definitely seeing that play out now. So good point.
And also in like this like post-Trump presidency era where it seems like political decorum has just been thrown out of the window, where it's just, like the brazenness of the power struggle has become very apparent in the last few years. And so, I mean, I think that, there are people in Oppenheimer who both are and are not more tactful than a Trump-like figure, just to consider that very primal power struggle amidst it all, in spite of whatever official sounding language they frame it in. Because like as a character refers to it towards the end of the movie, that Oppenheimer, in this security clearance hearing that you see bits of throughout the whole movie, that it's a kangaroo court. The odds are set against him. He's giving his testimony, but it's obvious that he is not going to get his security clearance renewed.
Yeah.
And
you see that right away. You feel that right away, even from the very start of the film. And he seems like he's under the gun in a big way.
Exactly. And one question I was asking myself in the aftermath of this fifth viewing was, like they talk repeatedly about the idea of a chain reaction that could ignite the atmosphere. Notably, the final lines of the movie have to do with that too. And I was asking myself, like, was there a point when we can say this begins in the movie? Does this chain reaction begin at a certain point? And like, I mean,
a chain reaction of of some event that eventually leads to where the film ends up.
Right.
Okay.
And in some ways, I think like you can't pinpoint just one thing. I think it's there from the very beginning.
You could say that.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I remember very clearly about first watching this movie is that the first, I think, 45-ish minutes or so of the film, they're perfectly good. But when Matt Damon's character shows
I
up,
love Damon. And
he's very good. But when he shows up, the movie really takes off.
Right.
And
right.
if you had to point to any one moment, it would probably be that one.
Yeah.
It would be that he kind of shows up and goes, I understand you've got this record. I understand that might not really like you,
Yeah.
but you are the person that I'm putting all my weight behind.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that really sends everything in overdrive.
Yeah. But even before that, when you consider like ways that that Oppenheimer is stirring things up with it at I think it's Berkeley, UC Berkeley, with his left-wing activities, you know, the way that he butts heads with Ernest Lawrence,
Right.
Like I sort of feel like
The like theoretical versus hands-on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also the political, you know,
right.
the
His
political disagreement between them too.
Socialist, communist party
Right.
affiliations.
Yeah. I think that there's a certain amount of that, like in the build-up. Maybe this is just the rewatches talking, but you know, I feel like I can see the steps being made before Leslie Groves shows up, and that, like, as much as I do agree that the movie escalates significantly when he shows up. I feel like there is like a cause and effect leading to that. A series of causes and effects.
Yeah, I mean, and one moment that's really stuck with me is like very like towards the beginning of the film where you see him at Cambridge and you get a peek into these like kind of visions he's having of kind of the subatomic world. And I think that like he's plagued with this like very deep anxiety, this like absolute need to have to understand what's happening to the world on a molecular level, because I think it deeply scares him to not be able to understand. And I think that really just is what the driving force behind him is.
Yeah, that it was there all along, sort of what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Exactly.
I wanted to point to also one thing. They did select this clip for the Oscar telecast, and it was one of my favorite moments in the movie. Is I think Niels Bohr, he says, you know,
About reading music.
reading music, you know, it's like reading music. He's like, it's not whether you can read it, it's whether you can hear the music.
Yeah.
Can you hear the music?
Yeah.
And he's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that line, not only because of our affiliations with music,
Of course.
Yeah.
but
it's a perfect metaphor.
beautiful,
It is.
beautiful metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, for context, this is right after Oppenheimer has, out of disdain for his professor who he's working with at the time, he has injected, I don't know if it's cyanide or some kind of chemical into an apple on his desk.
Yeah.
And then
So
Niels
gnarly.
Bohr is about to eat it, and he snatches it out of his hand.
Right.
I mean, in some ways, like,
But at this point, he has come to try to retrieve it. Like,
yes,
And he wakes up in a panic.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that scene is a great sort of microcosm of a lot of the greater conflicts of the movie. Although, I mean, you can't directly correlate it to the atomic bomb itself, because of course that was used.
Yeah.
That, like, the action did happen with that, but Oppenheimer just managed to snatch that apple away before it could do its damage.
Right.
Then, you know, that is the biggest difference in analogy between that and the atomic bomb, is that the damage was done there.
But there were people like on the project who were trying to keep this from happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe there's a foreshadowing there of that too.
Yeah, and I think that's also something that you were talking about, aspects of this film that maybe resonate today, maybe more so than others. And I don't know if this is something that truly resonates more today, but I love how this movie wrestles with the moral side of the bomb.
Right.
And how characters in it, like there's that one line that his friend Robbie or
Isidore Robbie. Yeah.
Isidore Robbie, thank you.
Yeah.
Played by David Krumholtz.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
I loved him in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The line that he says, the last 300 years of physics can't be for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Really, really compelling stuff. And I think that thread goes throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Characters are constantly asking themselves that, whether it's in relationship to the bomb or kind of like other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Robbie ultimately is like it like turns down going to Los Alamos. He also in real life wins his Nobel Prize in 1944. So he uses this time very effectively elsewhere.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like listening to the Blank Check episode about Oppenheimer that aired, I think, during the summer right after the movie came out. That they were saying Isadora Robbie is like the closest thing you get to sort of a conscience character.
I was just going to say
Definitely.
he's a
in
conscience
Oppenheimer.
character.
Yeah, that he's like the closest thing you get to someone who is just plain good. I think that there's little questionable things about him too, but generally he like stands for peace.
Yeah, even in their first encounters, right on the
Yeah.
train, he's like, "Man, you got to eat something.
Right.
Yeah.
It
You're
happens
gonna
to
fall
be-
through the cushions or something."
That's one
Yeah.
moment that was lightly unpleasant for me to watch because I have an intolerance of citrus fruit.
Oh, that's
So,
right. That's
yeah,
right.
it happens to be an orange that he's handing over, and so I'm just kind of like, well, can't relate to that.
yeah. Well, but
Yeah.
I guess, but him looking out for him.
But yes, he looks
right.
out for
He's
him.
like, dude, you and I, like, our work is going to be meaningful. Like,
Yeah,
you
and
got to take care of yourself.
He feels like maybe the best friend, just in the sense of like the friend that is being real with Oppenheimer,
Right.
and is trying his best, as you say, to like look out for him. I like David Krumholtz in this because I think that I have a question for you guys, which is I'm familiar with David Krumholtz from the 90s. He's in a couple of movies in the 90s, and I'm curious if either of you can name them.
no.
I'm going to look very briefly here at his career, and I'm going to see what pops up. I do remember him.
So-
10 Things I Hate About You.
10 Things I Hate About You, and that's actually not even one of the first two that come to mind. So one, he is in the Santa Claus movies as the head elf, Bernard,
Okay,
at
that
the
I
North
wouldn't
Pole.
have guessed. Okay.
I've not seen it.
And he's also Wednesday Addams' love interest at summer camp in Addams Family Values.
Oh, okay. So I've only seen the first Addams Family.
Okay,
Yeah.
Addams
Addams
Family
Family, I'm sorry.
Values, excellent sequel, and I'd say superior to the Addams Family movie.
Okay, good to know.
So I highly recommend it, and he is very young in that, obviously.
Shout out to Addams Family Values.
Exactly. And he's also, he's fairly young in the Santa Claus movies. I don't think that if you were to watch him in that movie and not know it was him, like, I don't think you'd be able to piece it together.
Right.
And I'm sure he's been working pretty consistently the last 25 years, but I just really like that he's like kind of trampolining back into the public consciousness with this, and I hope he continues to get more character work because I think he's really excellent.
I just was reminded of that scene. He clearly has Oppenheimer's ear in a way that a lot of characters don't, right? Because he says, he's like, are you like, who's in charge of the theoretical? And Oppenheimer's like, I am. And he's like, dude, you're spreading
can't do
yourself too
it.
thin.
And he's like,
You can't do that.
And Oppenheimer's like, fine, you do it.
Yeah, exactly. But he clearly has enough respect for him to be like, I'll take this thing that I was going to be in charge of and hand it over to you. And then I love that line too, where he says, he's like, you got to take off that outfit. He's like, they're hiring us to be the best versions of ourselves. So just
Love
be
that.
you. And I love that too. It's like great stuff.
So I have not seen, just to go back to Krumholtz for a moment, I have not seen any of those movies that were just mentioned, but I have seen him in person once in a play on Broadway, which was Leopoldstadt, which was up like through most of 2022 through like the first half of 23. And I don't remember his role that well, but what's interesting and I think relevant to mention there is that Leopoldstadt is a play specifically about a Jewish experience in what's initially not occupied but then later Nazi Germany. Like it's part of the play, it's not the whole thing. And I was thinking too about like as a Jewish viewer myself that like there's a little bit of commentary about Jewish identity in Oppenheimer that I think maybe you get the most sense of it from Isadora Robbie himself, he, like quoting Yiddish and things like that. But also, I mean, like this is very tangential, but I'm sure that someone can there's probably a scholar there who can probably find teachings in the Torah or Talmud that align with his worldview. But also that like he is the first person to mention with Oppenheimer, because they're on a train going to Zurich at that first meeting. Do you ever get the sense that our kind isn't welcome here? And, there's this element of opposing the Nazis in Oppenheimer's effort to create the atomic bomb. I was thinking a lot about it because, like, yes, it is acknowledged that, like, Oppenheimer himself acknowledges the oppression of the Jewish people of Europe at that time, but he's not living that himself. I mean, he is in a quite a privileged position in his own life. And weirdly, it feels like there's kind of like in his, even though he is himself a Jewish person, that there's kind of, and he's using that as kind of a platform for an opportunism in creating in the efforts to create the atomic bomb, that it's like a justification for doing it. Like also when he says, also with Isidore Rabi, that I don't know if we can be trusted with an atomic bomb, but I know the Germans can't.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's this kind of, this adds to the moral quandary of the central to the narrative, which is that, well, if you yourself are of an oppressed people, does that give you the right to oppress yourself? And I mean, I think the answer is very definitively no.
Right. And but I don't, would constructing and designing the bomb necessarily be what you just described? Like, would it actually be oppressing another set of people?
Well, I mean, it was used to do that. So it's,
I guess it was. And maybe this conversation here is a microcosm of what they talk about in this film, which is the idea of like, and you could argue that, but that you could also argue that you're also saving hundreds of thousands of lives by limiting, the warfare the way that we know it, and totally changing that.
Historical fact, though, that argues against that is that the dropping of the atomic bomb is not the reason why Japan surrendered. That they were actually, that Emperor Hirohito at that time, it was, very, like I don't know about surprisingly, but he was tight-lipped about, the way that they described the massacres that had happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They also didn't reveal the full scale of the damage. And the thing that made Japan surrender was the possibility of a Soviet land invasion. So whether the bomb was dropped or not, I don't think that is what would have affected Japan's outcome.
But to your point, Emilio, like the people who are deciding whether or not to drop the bomb would not be aware of that. So it's like in the moment of the decision, if you're weighing these two ideas, that information is not necessarily available.
Sure. Yeah. All very interesting considerations and points.
One other moment I was thinking of is I think he says to Lawrence, the line he says, "It's not your people they're putting in the camps."
It's to Lawrence. He says it's not your people they're putting into camps, it's mine. And I mean, it just adds more to that view that Oppenheimer has of his and America's side in the war. I was thinking as well, it's a comedic moment, but in that first conversation with Leslie Groves, when, Oppenheimer is talking about all the ways that from a procedural standpoint, the Germans have a head start on their atomic bomb efforts, but the one thing they have going against them is anti-Semitism. And then Leslie Groves just goes, "What?" And I just have to give a weird kind of praise to Matt Damon for evocatively portraying ignorant Goy right there. I just felt like that movie really nailed that moment.
Yeah.
But just the fact that character would not know what anti-Semitism is totally makes sense.
Or just not even really processing what he's saying.
Yeah. He definitely has a very specific agenda that he's trying to work out.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the idea, is that he's so focused on like what he's there to do that like he doesn't actually care what Oppenheimer's opinions are. He's just like, are you going to get the job done? And I feel like just while we're on this topic, something that's really necessary is to talk about Strauss.
Right.
Because they have that conversation. I think that's the first time we see them together.
Yes.
Where I guess correct me, but the way I interpreted it is like Oppenheimer calls him Strauss and he's like, no, it's Strauss. And they sort of have a conversation about like, are you diminishing your Jewish identity from this? And he's like, oh, I'm the president of the
Temple Emmanuel.
Yeah.
He's still claiming some connection to his ethnicity.
And I think, I mean, it's, if you've seen the movie once, it's clear, but I think the first time you see it, it's not necessarily clear at that moment just how much Strauss is trying to get a piece of Oppenheimer himself.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. In that moment, I mean, he's, and to the point that it almost feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, doesn't he feels like they talk about being self-made. He brings up the fact that he was like a shoe salesman.
A lowly shoe salesman.
And then, and
like
Oppenheimer calls him a
lowly.
lowly shoe salesman.
Yeah.
But even
just a shoe salesman.
Yeah. Even after feeling slighted, he's like, what do I need to do to get you on my side? Oh, you're, do you want to talk to Einstein out there? I got you, man. Like, it's like he's doing everything he can because his objective is to hire him, I guess.
Yeah.
Side note, I have to wonder if this movie inspired Philip Glass to write a new opera called Einstein by the Pond.
Possibly.
As opposed to on the beach, Einstein by bodies of water.
The Einstein by bodies of water universe.
Yeah.
I like that.
Maybe there's a letterboxed list in there.
Maybe so.
But then so you have all of those scenes, and it's clear that like Louis Strauss is trying to he's trying to get something out of Oppenheimer, but the extent of it that plays out over the full runtime of the movie.
Right. Well, and that scene is very consequential because that is the moment right there. His interaction with Einstein and the fallout of it becomes the real thing that he can't get over.
Right.
Yeah, he even freely admits it to the Senate.
Or to the Senate. You're right.
Right. Like he admits it. He's like, at that time I was just trying to figure out what he talked to him. Exactly.
To sour him on me.
Yeah, exactly. So it clearly struck a nerve there.
Yeah. And maybe since we're talking about Louis Strauss now, maybe like that's a good segue into the question that you posed, Emilio, about the interplay of color and black and white in Oppenheimer, that it's like, obviously it's a callback to Christopher Nolan's Memento.
Big time.
Are there other movies where he's done that? I think just Memento.
I'm trying to remember if The Prestige does it too.
I think Prestige doesn't, I don't think it goes between color and black and white, but it does, I think it does cross timelines.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm remembering, but no, but I absolutely. Yeah. And that was really interesting for me too. In observing that, I kind of did some digging around. Yeah. And I did hear an interview with Christopher Nolan, and I can't remember exactly where it was, so I'm sorry for not citing this specifically. But he was speaking to somebody about the use of black and white and color. And for this movie, he seemed to be kind of, if there was anything he was trying to evoke out of the viewer, he was keeping it kind of close to the vest. He basically said, he's like, black and white is a really nice way to show something to the viewer and have them feel a little different, but on like a subconscious level and not necessarily anything else.
Right.
And so I have to imagine that some of the use of black and white in this is a little bit more towards that, which is it's not necessarily geared towards like a distinct point of view or a state of mind, that it was more towards that. But it sounds like you're going to say something different.
I found a couple of quotes from him that I think kind of challenge that to an extent. So I have two different quotes. I'll start. I mean, there's also like these. If you're just watching the film, it's like the straw scenes that are in black and white, and those are labeled as fusion, and it's pretty much everything else that's in color, which is labeled as fission. The quote that I'm going to read is from Nolan saying, "I wrote the script in the first person, which I'd never done before, and I don't know if anyone's ever done that, if that's a thing people do or not. The film is objective and subjective. The color scenes are subjective. The black and white scenes are objective. I wrote the color scenes from the first person." So for an actor reading that in some ways, I think it'd be quite daunting. And he goes in a different interview saying that he has these two timelines running, one's in color, and that's Oppenheimer's subjective experience, which is the bulk of the film. And then he says the other is a black and white timeline, which is a more objective view of his story.
Interesting.
Okay. That's... great. That's awesome. I love that both of those things are out there.
I love that in some interviews he's like, here are specifics. In other interviews he's like, I don't know.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, something
That's really fast. Thank you for sharing. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of made me think of before the movie had even come out. It was clear from the trailers that there was going to be this dichotomy of color and black and white. And neither of you have seen Better Call Saul, right?
I've seen almost all of it.
Oh, you've seen almost all of it.
They do that though too. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's without spoiling it. It's interesting because there's a kind of a similar interplay of color and black and white on that show.
Definitely, and
not cross cutting between the two, but like they're more in distinct zones. But like the times in the portions of time that they represent,
and it's interesting too because it's a very clear choice at the beginning of every season.
Yeah,
there is a moment in black and white that is a more recent in the timeline.
Post Breaking Bad.
Yeah, post Breaking Bad catch up on where Saul is.
Yeah.
I've not seen Better Call Saul. I want to. I mean, I've watched all of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I didn't get to Better Call Saul, but my cousin works on Better Call Saul, so I feel bad that I've not gotten to it. He essentially is like a set builder, but his official title is Mob Boss.
Mob Boss?
Mob Boss.
Wow.
Well, it's just like how they have Best
Shout
Boy.
out to Mob Boss.
Yeah, it's just all these titles on film sets that are just like names that have become normalized.
Yeah.
But sound strange out of context. Wow. Well, shout out
Best
to
Boys?
your mob boss cousin. Yeah. Best
Yeah, there
Boys.
you go. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was just a little curious about that aspect because I love Memento.
And we've talked Memento.
Yeah, we've talked Memento before.
Right.
Really dig
And,
that.
Well, also interestingly too, it's that like in all of these cases, we're talking about that the black and white. I mean, even though it probably lives in our minds aesthetically as something that signifies old, like it signifies something being of deep in the past. It's like in all of these cases, it's actually kind of has more of a forward function.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that struck me and I think was a little I don't want to go all the way to the word confusing, but did throw me for just a second the first time I watched the movie is that I feel like we're kind of trained to see black and white and assume it's set in the past.
Right.
So it took me a minute to figure out how these things connect together because I just sort of assumed that black and white meant that it happened before most of the movie, but it's the reverse. It's like it happens after the majority of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that maybe after all of these incidents, there's more clarity.
Yeah.
Like you say, more subjective.
Yeah.
Objective.
Yeah.
And that what happened before feels way more up to interpretation.
But it's interesting because with the Strauss scenes being the ones that are quote unquote objective, I feel like they're still very subjective because he has such a he's so soured on Oppenheimer that it's like I'm sure that Oppenheimer's like in color scenes are subjective in his favor, but I think that the Strauss black and white scenes are subjective not in his favor.
Right. That I could see that too.
I got the sense because part of how Strauss functions in the narrative is not just as his own character, but as a sense of how the world at Oppenheimer's time saw him. Yeah. How a certain part of the world saw him. And that I think, through Strauss, though the film has the ability to give greater commentary on the external appearances and influence of Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and not even just that Strauss is like representing what people think of him, but also the reverse, and that a lot of people come to bat for Oppenheimer at this moment, and they say like it's been decades since a cabinet nominee has not been approved.
Right. Exactly.
And it's this Oppenheimer thing that takes him down.
Yeah. I was also thinking, I'm wondering if Nolan's note about subjective, objective might also be a little bit of a red herring because that scene, the first half of all the black and white stuff gets totally flipped later in the film because the first half of it, Strauss plays very dumb, or is trying to push a different narrative to the Senate aide. And totally tries to throw him off his scent. Yeah. So there is definite subjectivity there in how he's presenting himself. Intentional subjectivity. So
totally. I found it so interesting that he, in this same quote, him talking about writing the script originally in first person. Like, I can't even really comprehend what a first person script would even look like.
When you said it just then, I got very quiet and I was trying to envision all the ways that could happen. And yes, I was at a loss for words. Thoughts.
Actually, during the holiday season, I was in a bookstore shopping for gifts and happened to see a copy of the Oppenheimer screenplay on a shelf. I opened it up just to page through it a little bit. And I noticed that detail of it, the first person writing. I don't think it like registered to me as such like a distinct thing, but I was like, oh, this is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
And I had to, of course, flip through to the pages where the Trinity test is described. Yeah, and it's like I've considered just like getting a copy of that screenplay to have as a piece of literature, because there's so much great dialogue.
Oh, there's great dialogue
throughout the movie. It's incredibly quotable.
Yeah,
almost to the point that like you can't just distill it down to 2 or 3. It's like almost in every scene there's some kind of great quote.
Yeah. I think that this conversation about Strauss is a great way to also start talking about some of these character actors.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And some of these, because this movie is populated with tons of them.
It's a feast of character
Yeah, because
actors.
obviously Robert Downey Jr. wins the Supporting Actor Award for this, which I think the first viewing of this, I don't know that his performance fully clicked with me, because I went into this knowing very little about Oppenheimer. Like, I feel like that's something that they kind of glaze over in public school.
Yeah, I think so too.
And
I have a connection to that point. I'll save it for later.
You can do it now.
Well, it's because one of the other movies that I was reminded of a lot while watching Oppenheimer for the first time and every time since, though it is about a very, very different type of person, is Spike Lee's Malcolm X. In terms of how it's constructed as a biopic, there's I think
totally see that.
The pacing of it, the scope of it, the tone of the movie. I think there's a lot of similarities, and also in just positioning Malcolm X as this person that even though he had long since died before the movie was made, he's still relevant in a lot of ways.
Totally,
the movie makes that very clear. And I just thought it's also about 3 hours long. And Malcolm X too is another person who I have noted is under discussed in public schools.
I agree. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X in high school, but it was one of those where it was like, choose a book from the library, do a report on that book. And that's the book that I chose. So but I feel like that was like, I think I had more education on Malcolm X than most people just because I chose to read his book.
Yeah, I mean, he also famously had difficult, or at least from government perspectives, religious affiliations. Malcolm X did the same way that Oppenheimer had his political affiliations challenged quite a bit.
But yes, like going in with, I'd say like minimal education on Oppenheimer, I definitely had no idea who Strauss was. And so it took me a little bit to figure out how these two stories connect. And ultimately, like by the end of the film, and then definitely on rewatch, like his performance clicked so much more for me because of the parallels happening between like his cabinet hearing and then also this like, the security clearance hearing that Oppenheimer's going through, like that parallel and how their stories interconnect and how they affect each other. Like it worked a lot better for me on rewatch when I understood how they fit together. And thus his performance worked better for me.
And government's hand in shaping history.
Right.
I think that's the other big thing that became a lot more clear to me upon my half rewatch of this. He really represents the way government is still very biased, is not immune to petty grudges.
Right. And that like Oppenheimer and Strauss both are people that the government saw as tools to use at certain points, and also things discard, discard. When they didn't need them anymore.
Yeah, which is another thing I dug about that. For sure.
Yeah, but I think before rewatching this movie, I had been saying that if I were to nominate a supporting actor in this movie, I would have chose Damon. And I don't know that I necessarily stick by that, but I love Damon in this, which I said earlier.
Yeah.
He's excellent.
Awesome.
As you said, Emilio, it's like this movie just picks up so much. It just goes to a completely different level once he's introduced. And he's like, he has a lot of like one-off lines that are really great. Like he adds just like a little sprinkle of like comedic relief and like kind of in the sense of like kind of relieving the tension, even though he's a very like by the book and like very stressful man to look at.
And when you consider Leslie Groves' role in the whole situation, I mean, he really is a fearsome character too.
Yeah, definitely.
He's fearsome, but
Yeah.
they also seem like very well matched people.
Yeah.
Like they kind of get one
They-
another
yeah.
right away.
Yeah, it's like Oppenheimer at one point like says to him like, I see through you. Like you studied engineering at MIT.
Yeah.
Like you can't fool me with this like meathead kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you're very intelligent and like
Yeah.
you understand what's happening. And you were chosen for this project for a reason.
Right.
Quite a pivot here, but I'm just going to say I'm constantly impressed by how Tony Goldwyn continues to shed a role that could have absolutely defined his career. He plays the bad guy in the movie Ghost.
Oh, okay.
Very
Never seen it.
famously, like
yeah.
an all-time early 90s enormous blockbuster hit bad
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah,
And
it's
he's
been
got-
a long time since I've seen Ghost, so
Yeah.
I would not have been able to put his face with that.
He plays the big bad in that movie.
Okay, of course.
And he plays it quite well, but man, has he gone on to have a good career and not be typecast.
Yeah.
Well done, Tony Goldwyn.
Yeah. Well done, Tony Goldwyn. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like there's so many great people cast in this movie, like all the way down to the smallest parts.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't have time to go into everyone we enjoy, but I mean, one person in the movie who, like, on, especially in the first few viewings, was like a pleasant surprise to see was Josh Peck as Kenneth Bainbridge.
I mean, this cast list had been announced way in advance,
Yeah.
and there was kind of a joke for a while of like every white man in Hollywood is in Oppenheimer, and I think that Josh Peck was somebody that stuck with a lot of people of like, how is Josh Peck going to fit into this movie?
Well, there's a joke. I mean, did either of you ever watch Drake and Josh?
Yeah,
No.
of course.
Yeah,
I
well,
think that maybe Emilio,
This is a
you're
generational thing?
Slightly
Okay.
This is
too
a-
old
yeah.
for this. I think that I was kind of right in the sweet spot, and then I think Julian, you're probably the youngest of like the Drake and Josh.
Yeah,
viewers.
I have
probably.
no idea what Drake and Josh is.
It,
Continue.
it was a
Nickelodeon
Nickelodeon
show.
sitcom where they were two, Drake Bell and Josh Peck were two
Stepbrothers.
Stepbrothers,
Gotcha.
yes, brought together by married parents. And there's a joke, there's a gag in one episode where Drake makes this friend who's eerily similar to Josh, and has this tendency to repeat things that Josh says for emphasis, or repeat things like the way that Josh does for emphasis. And Josh is saying, yeah, it's just like me. I repeat things for emphasis. Emphasis. And then I just had the thought of like, well, when you could see where this is going. That,
Yeah.
well, I mean, how much more emphatic does it get than pressing that button to attempt to abort the Trinity test right before it happens?
right. Oh, right.
Emphasis.
That's
Yeah.
him. Okay.
Yeah.
How much
I gotcha.
more? Yeah, how much more emphasis can you get?
Nice.
True.
I like that.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
might be the emphasis of Josh Peck's film career too.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we
definitely.
go.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that much like with Krumholtz, I hope that Josh Peck starts getting some more roles out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Another person I really enjoy in this is Rami Malek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he really just ties it all together.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, he really does. And honestly, for most of the film, you don't see that coming.
And
Yeah.
that's what I enjoy about it so much, which I'm sure is like indicative of how it happened in real life, is just kind of this guy, one of many scientists and one of many people that worked on this project, kind of comes out and he's like, I have this deep knowledge that
Yeah.
I am dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also a person who like only has like he in person has only interacted with Oppenheimer twice that we've seen.
Yeah.
And both times Oppenheimer was rude to him.
I was just
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
say, yeah, if you remember him from the film, you know that Oppenheimer is not very nice to
Yeah,
him.
and when Strauss and his team hear that they're going to bring in a scientist from the Manhattan Project, Strauss asks, like, do we know where this guy was stationed? Do we know if he was at Los Alamos? Because Oppenheimer was, I forget what he says, the mayor and the sheriff.
The sheriff
and
and
whatever else.
yeah.
And Rami Malek, I forget his character's name.
David Hill.
Thank you. David Hill was not stationed at Los Alamos. He was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he doesn't necessarily have like any affinity towards Oppenheimer necessarily.
Yep.
Yeah.
All connected by railroad.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Very
he's like, I think he's a unique sort of hanger on in this narrative because, yeah, he doesn't personally have much to do with him. It's like, what is his angle in trying to defend him? Like, what is he getting out of this? And it's just like maybe reaching from a very far length to try to get his own notoriety from Oppenheimer's status. I mean, he is doing what is kind of a noble thing in revealing the pettiness of Strauss's grudge. There's the question of like, why does he have to be the one who does that?
Right.
Well, it seemed like he had information that maybe other people didn't
true,
have.
yeah.
And I don't know if the film says exactly how he gained this information.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to, but
yeah. Whereas like a lot of other people who may have been in similar positions, perhaps they had died by that time, perhaps they weren't interested.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously like it's going to be I don't know. It puts you in an incredibly vulnerable position to testify before Congress and have like the entire nation, the entire world talking about what you're revealing. And you're going to have sympathizers with Strauss who are going to attack you for that. And Strauss comes with a great amount of power. So I can see how other people that may have had this information were like bullied or bribed away from sharing it.
Could see that for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else we want to mention?
I have a very small one that I'm not even going to say necessarily that he's like excellent in this because it's so minor, but I really like Alex Wolff in this. I think he's really great. If you go back to, I now have no sense of time, the year that both Old and Pig came out in the same summer, he's in each of those in incredibly starkly different roles.
2018 maybe?
No,
21.
It was post-pandemic.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember if it was last year, and apparently it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh
so
gosh, yeah. There we go. Sense of time.
I have no
completely
sense
gone.
of time anymore. I walked out of Pig and I said, Alex Wolff will win an Oscar someday. And I want to go on the record and say that because I fully believe it. And it maybe he's fairly young. It maybe will take 10 years plus. But when that happens, clip this and say that I predicted it.
Cool.
Because he's so good in Pig. He's so good in that. And he's very minor in this. He plays Alvarez, who is a student at Berkeley, and he's the one, if you guys remember, he runs out of the barbershop with the news that they've split the atom in Germany.
Yep.
That's kind of his big moment, and we don't see much more of him beyond that. He's very minor in this, but I like him a lot as an actor. I think he's probably best known for Hereditary. That's kind of like his big breakout
The
role.
Naked Brothers Band.
The Naked Brothers Band.
Which is also interesting that there's quite a few people that
Nickelodeon stars?
Yeah, former like Nickelodeon and more broadly kids entertainment stars who are in Oppenheimer.
Krumholtz as well.
Krumholtz,
They got to grow up, man.
Yeah, Josh Peck, Alex Wolff. I mean, Michael Angarano too, who plays Robert Serber, who had the lead role in the movie Sky High.
I also know he's married to Maya Erskine. Or he's her partner, I think.
Yeah.
And I love Pen 15. Y'all know Pen 15, right?
I have not seen that.
I've not gotten to it yet. I need to.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. He also plays a drama teacher in that show. He's quite good. So
there are a bunch of other character actors in this who are people I feel like Hollywood doesn't usually know how to use that Nolan finds great roles for, be it Alden Ehrenreich or Dane DeHaan. Or, interestingly, David Dastmalchian, who I feel like Hollywood does know how to use, but he only works for very specific things. And I've also just got to say, Tom Conti perfectly cast as Einstein.
Oh yeah,
perfectly cast.
Fun fact: my wife is good friends with the woman who knit his hat.
Oh, for Oppenheimer. Wow.
Yeah. She's a Broadway stitcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just
the hat plays a big part.
Yes, although I think it's
Not
a
that
different
hat.
hat. It's the one that he's wearing when I think he's in the woods talking with that other guy. Which also
Kurt Gödel.
You were talking about like great little moments. I wanted to know more when that guy's like, trees are the most inspiring of things. I'm like, I want to know more. Like, tell me, talk to me for half an hour about that.
Because they also are saying that like he is so afraid that the Nazis are going to poison him that sometimes he won't eat.
Right.
And so it's like this guy's clearly like really plagued by what's going on right now. It's like I'm really interested in his life.
I kind of am too. Anyway, continue.
So I think that there's been conversation around this movie, particularly when it first came out, about like whether or not this movie is glorifying Oppenheimer and his actions, which I would say no, it is not. But on that same topic, there was also some criticism about the decision not to show an aftermath of the bombings. And I'm curious I have thoughts on that. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on this movie choosing not to like portray on the on-screen violence of what happens in Japan.
Well, I think that could be a whole movie unto itself. Like the scope of that is immense to say the least. And I think there's like a certain trust in the audience to understand the scope of the damage that Well, maybe like the movie does not have to indulge in that for the audience to understand what happened. It is mentioned, of course.
You say the word indulge, and I think that that's the perfect word for it.
You've used that term a lot,
right,
by the way, in our conversations.
Yes.
The idea of like, not just like in a way that the word salient has shown up, but when you've talked
used
about like
indulge saliently.
but the idea of violence being portrayed on screen as an indulgence as opposed to like something to further the story necessarily.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
and that's kind of my thought of why I agree with their decision to not portray it, is that I think it would be an indulgence and ultimately like would be a disservice, because at that point it's just like you're Hollywoodifying it. Like
it also seems to run somewhat contrary to how the rest of the film tells the story of Oppenheimer.
Exactly.
And it also kind of thematically ties back to the idea that there's this sort of separation that these physicists have from the actual violence that their work has created. So in a lot of ways, I feel like it's a very natural outgrowth of how this story would be told, is that it stays in this place where all of this carnage is theoretical in their world.
Yeah. And it's like he's plagued with a lot of guilt from, I think, pretty much the moment after the test. He's like immediately, he kind of loses some power. He has that moment with Leslie Gross
where they don't fill him in or something.
Where they're like taking the bomb away or whatever.
You're not going to be consulted as to when this was dropped.
Yeah, he's like, oh, like you'll let me know, right? And they're like, yeah, sure,
as best I can.
As best I can.
As best I can. Perfect.
Yeah, and that's the moment when the discarding of Oppenheimer begins.
Exactly.
Which is foreshadowed.
Yeah,
I can't remember who says it, but he's like, they really need us. He's like, and when they don't,
until
they'll
they
get
don't.
rid of us.
Yeah. There was I'm not completely sure. I think that might have been Richard Tolman when he's interviewing people to partake in the Manhattan Project. That he's one person who, like Leslie Groves, leaves the room and then he says that to Oppenheimer. It's in that whole montage when he's first recruiting people played by Josh Peck,
getting the band together.
He's getting the band together, exactly.
But there's like just a lot of guilt that you see, I think, from that moment onwards. And obviously the scene where he is giving a speech about like he's talking to the people at Los Alamos about like we did it, but it's like cutting the sound out, and you can tell he's just like already he's so disconnected from the reality. And you hear there's just like when the sound first drops, there's just this one like blood curdling scream that like really got me on rewatch. I think that just from that point onward, like you see how tortured he is about what he's done.
I just remembered you do start seeing some of the people who have the like radiation,
but it's not they're like they're the same people that are there in the audience,
right. But it's his mind thinking about
he's having these visions, and that's the closest you see to anything, and that's just a vision. But I do think that is enough. That's all we needed to see.
And also,
and as you guys have said, this is his story. It's not Atomic Bomb the movie. Like people kind of made it out to be. It's a movie about him.
And also, I mean, fun fact about like the girl you see her skin's peeling off in that scene, that is Christopher Nolan's daughter.
Oh, yeah. I knew that and I forgot it. I think Blank Check mentioned
I think they did mention that. Thank you, Blank Check.
Thank you.
But who I just saw live at their show last week too. It's fresh in my mind.
Very cool.
But so that's and I think
I was rewatching Oppenheimer at that time.
Yes.
And I don't know what I was doing on Friday. I was hanging out with my son. We were drawing excavators and working on spelling the word line painter.
Oh, cool.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
Took me a second, honestly. But then, I think going back to this idea of words that are specifically used when talking about movies, whether it's salient or indulge, I think a word that I've heard thrown around very loosely is glorify when it comes to talking about film subjects. And I think a lot of people say glorify when they mean depict.
I think you're right.
Yeah. To depict is not to glorify. They are different things. And I mean, maybe I'm just drawing from, heated discourse amongst fellow college students back from that period of my life. Because, I mean, people do get heated talking about movies in a liberal arts college. But
you don't say.
Yeah, I never once did I think that this movie was glorifying Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
For all of the morally questionable things that you see throughout the movie, that could, that there could be an argument that it's glorifying. I never really thought that.
Yeah, and it provides counterpoint to a lot of these things.
A lot of them,
like we mentioned earlier, once Germany has surrendered, a lot of the scientists at Los Alamos and elsewhere in Chicago, like they started a petition to not drop the bomb. Like there is a counter here. It's
Right.
not just, oh, we made it, now let's drop it.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention this one thing. I posed this as a question, but I really just love this as a little detail. He gets a flashback or a flash forward to hearing what just feels like a bunch of stomping feet.
Yeah.
And at the time when that happens in the film, you have no idea what that's about. But then eventually you come to see that those stomping feet are meant to represent praise.
Yeah.
I think there's some insinuation there that he is, while working on this bomb, aware of the idea that there might be a lot of praise coming his way.
Yeah, but then when the moments you hear that, I think there's two moments before it happens, and there are moments of anxiety, I think.
Yeah, I interpreted it more as anxiety because in the scene where it actually is happening in reality, that's the scene that I was talking about earlier, where I think that he really starts to have to grapple with what he's done.
But does he know in that moment yet that he's going to feel so anxious about it?
I think on some level, yes. I
He
mean,
might.
Yeah.
He's dealt with a lot of anxiety in his life.
Yeah, and the first scene where that you hear that, interestingly, is a scene that seems pretty removed, which is when he's having his final conversation with Jean Tatlock.
Yeah. See, I don't remember exactly when, but
Yeah, that's the
You
first
guys
scene
would
when
know
you
better.
when you hear that sound cue, and maybe that's just his sense of like all of the consequences of his actions beginning to mount.
Yeah.
I feel like we have not mentioned a thing about Kitty Oppenheimer.
That's
Do you
true.
want to say just a minute or two about her?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go into Kitty.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kitty, I mean, there's this sense of her being kind of behind the scenes as like a coach for him in some ways, that like she's kind of riding on his success too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, like in spite of all my viewings, I noticed that most with this most recent one.
What do you mean by riding on his success?
Well, that there are these times like when he is feeling doubtful of, or maybe not doubtful, but like there's a scene where you see them on the edge of a cliff in what will be Los Alamos, and she's sort of saying like, they need you.
Yeah.
They need you.
Yeah,
She's like a cheerleader.
Definitely,
Yeah.
she definitely
Yeah.
feels like a cheerleader.
Yeah.
It's interesting though too, because she gets presented a little bit as somebody who has resigned herself to the idea that while she's very educated herself, that her best way to sort of make it in the world is by kind of aligning herself with these
That's true.
academics.
Yeah,
but
there's
we
a
also,
jadedness.
I mean, we have to acknowledge the time period of
Oh yeah,
this.
Yeah.
Like-
I'm not saying at all that it's a flaw of hers.
Yeah, I think like this was what was expected of women. Like, and we also get the very small moment with the like one woman scientist who was like assigned to be a typist.
Lily Hornig. Yeah.
Yeah, and who Oppenheimer has to vouch to be put on I guess the theoretical team. So I look at Kitty, who's like, I've spoken, I think, on mic before about how like I don't know that Kitty as a character, Emily Blunt's performance necessarily connected with me, but the reason why I wanted you to expand a little bit on writing on his success is because I was afraid that you were kind of implying that she was like riding his coattails and like and that would have concerned me if that's what you meant,
No.
because this was mostly her only option.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, because this is what was expected of women in that time period.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no. She's very much a product of her time.
Yeah.
And she's a very shrewd person, too. And as the
Yeah.
movie goes on, you see her as being somebody with a tremendous backbone in a way that he really doesn't have himself, or a way
Yeah.
that it's weird. They kind of flip almost.
Yeah.
When they're younger, she feels like she's resigned herself to a certain type of life or a certain type of fate in life.
Yeah.
And later in the film, it seems like Oppenheimer is the one who's resigned himself to a particular fate. So yeah, they do kind of flip a little bit in that respect.
But one
Yeah.
of the things I wrote down watching is, I mean, we have the scene where Oppenheimer, it's like after they've had their first child and Oppenheimer comes home and their child is screaming and Kitty is in the kitchen, like drunk. And he says like, shouldn't you go to him? And she's like, I've been going to him all day.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Emilio, because you're the parent here.
Watching that scene, I felt like there was a lot of information that was left out. I think in today's world, a mom who has to hit the sauce a little bit, that is
it's wine
social
o'clock.
media. It is wine o'clock. It's mommy juice. That is accepted behavior these days. And so maybe the movie is making a little bit of a comment on that. However, it's a comment that has a consequence.
Yeah.
Because the next scene, Oppenheimer literally takes that child to their friends, claiming that they both are selfish people.
Yeah.
And I feel like if that woman is not breastfeeding, like that could be a formula fed baby. She can get as drunk as she fucking wants. Like light it up as long as you can, be there to like make sure you don't drop your kid.
And there's also like my read is like Oppenheimer gets home. Clearly she has been dealing with this all day and it's time for him to do some parenting. I don't care how important his job is. I don't care if he's changing the world. If he had a child with a woman who he then married, he has agreed to raise this child in equal partnership. But again, at the time, this was not true. So it's like that line of shouldn't you go to him is I think played pretty cold intentionally because you get her reaction of like, why does it always have to be me?
Sure.
When I am just like, I'm also educated and accomplished, but this is my lot in life, which is not what I want to be doing.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And so that
I felt deeply for her character for whatever reason in that moment. It's justice for Kitty. Unlikely shared universe. I'm going to get this going.
One of you mentioned this line in passing earlier on, but there's a point when it is mentioned that Leslie Groves studied engineering at MIT. And, well, I mean, I just started to think, well, what if this talent is genetic? And maybe, like, I tried to look it up and I couldn't find any information about whether the real Leslie Groves had any children or anything else about his family for that matter. I probably just didn't look carefully enough. But let's say like maybe, he has a daughter or he has a niece who ends up getting into a relationship and marrying a man with the last name Hunting.
I was going to say, I mean, he could also just be like an absentee father for all we know.
That's true that he could be. But so, it's like, there's a daughter or a niece who marries a man named Hunting, and then they have this child named Will who, in the brief time they get to spend with him, shows himself off as kind of a wonderkind, a talented...
Good boy.
What was that?
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. He's very, very talented at that. And sadly, some kind of freak accident happens to these parents, and Will is orphaned. But also that these parents have... they've set up shop in Boston, and they... maybe they're following in the footsteps of Leslie Groves himself or something like that. But Will Hunting ends up in Boston trying to find his way. And he, maybe he has his own aspirations to a similar effect and becomes a janitor at MIT and starts solving some equations on a whiteboard there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I see it.
Yeah.
We might refer to this character as good.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Apart from maybe all the trouble he gets into.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
Yeah, not his fault.
I don't have one fully fleshed out. I was trying so hard to figure out how David Krumholtz... there are too many characters in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, there's a ton.
There's too many. Remind me of his character name.
Isadora Robbie.
Thank you. I kept trying to figure out if Isadora Robbie could potentially shift to like... could shift to like petri dish, like kind of like growing of babies, and like could possibly supply the North Pole with elves based on his genetic code, but it seemed a little too wild.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Maybe with a little bit more brainstorming, workshopping, we can figure that out. But I like that.
That's the
good.
closest I could get.
Yeah.
Cool.
Was that everything we have for that?
That's everything we got for that.
Well, do you both remember how even long before the Oscars happened that we were speculating, in spite of all the unknowns at that time, that when the time to discuss this year's Best Picture winner came around, we would be talking about Oppenheimer? I believe we did. Follow us on TikTok, Sleepless Cinematic Pod. Follow us on Instagram under the same username. Email us, sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Julian_Barthold or Madeline at
Patroness of Cats.
Yeah. I think those are all the plugs.
Yeah.
Yes. All
We
right.
did it, guys.
We did it.
Awesome.
We did it.